Hello and welcome to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Thank you so much for joining us once again. We'll be speaking with Dave Herring. He's joining us here as CEO of Invivyd, a biopharmaceutical company, to talk about the development of a monoclonal antibody to prevent COVID-19 in immunocompromised people through their pivotal Phase 3 trial called CANOPY. Welcome to Health Professional Radio, Dave Herring. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Tell us a bit about your background and your current role as CEO of Invivyd.
Thanks. It's been an exciting time. Unfortunately, we're still, as a society, managing and dealing with the aftermath of COVID-19. And while we have left what many consider to be the pandemic phase, we're now in the endemic phase. And Invivyd is a company that was founded during COVID-19 with the goal of really making a strong impact on this disease and preventing the continued unmet burden of disease that we continue to see. I joined the company in mid-2021, having previously been at Pfizer and launched their COVID vaccine in the U.S. and worked with Warp Speed and the U.S. government and a whole host of different folks to get that product successfully on the market, and now have really taken that background and combined it with the brilliant science of the company and people to work on this current lead program.
Now, what is it that Invivyd actually does specifically, and talk a bit about your lead candidate, VYD222. What is it focused on?
Yeah, so we had an initial antibody called ADG20, sort of in the height of the pandemic, that was designed to both treat and prevent COVID-19. We had it in clinical trials when the major shift happened from the Delta to Omicron background of the virus, and that both initially reduced activity and then knocked out the activity. I bring that up because we're in this actually very privileged space in that ADG20, since it had those clinical trials, has enabled VYD222 to be in the place it is. The FDA has talked about the ability to immunobridge back to that clinical trial. And this is important because that study was done in a significantly large, double-blind, clinically controlled event trial. And so 222 is really designed to use that data and is an offspring of that original antibody. And for those of you who aren't healthcare professionals, one of the exciting things about monoclonal antibodies is, unlike a vaccine where we need your immune system to actually do something, seroconvert the vaccine into antibodies, when we introduce a monoclonal antibody, we take that step out and simply provide the monoclonal antibody. And this is particularly important for people who have diminished immune systems, immunocompromised folks, people who are on a variety of different drugs or conditions that make vaccines not able to provide the protection that they need. So VYD222 is targeting that vulnerable population first. They're not the only ones who would benefit from an antibody, but as mentioned, that's really the goal of the product. And being a direct lineage of our original antibody, we have put a pivotal study in place. We just announced last week that it's fully enrolled. And in that study, we're using the surrogate marker, which is serum virus neutralizing titer values, and tying those back to the original program, which is allowing us to really pull those two pieces of information together, and with the goal of being able to do this as rapidly as possible to get a product out to people that really need it.
Before we get into this study, are there currently approved therapies for the prevention of COVID in these immunocompromised patients that you spoke of?
No, it's a really good question, and unfortunately the answer is no. There are no preventative products on the market. The last one that was on the market was Evusheld from AstraZeneca, and its authorization was removed in January of this year. So this patient population has been really suffering with a lack of options. And so while the rest of the population is able to use vaccines and get protection from them, as I said, this group is unfortunately not only left with very few options, or in this case, zero options, but also are the ones most at risk for severe outcomes from COVID-19.
Briefly describe some of the challenges specifically of developing a preventative therapy for these folks.
Yeah, and so, one of the keys is, certainly you need to be able to enroll a trial that includes them. So our current trial utilizes two different arms. 450 people are in cohort B, which is an all-comers arm, and cohort A is this immune-compromised population, is 300 individuals. And so we have done a significant amount of work making sure that we have communicated and let people know about the study, which worked out well in terms of being able to enroll it. The other key piece is, being able to generate the data that we need from them. And again, the good news for us versus a vaccine is we really don't need your immune system to do anything. And so there's not any significant development challenge there. This is one of these situations where we infuse the drug, the antibody, it circulates in your blood. And as long as it continues to work against the most recent variants, then you should, in theory, be able to see the benefit from it. And that's really what we're testing in the clinical trial.
Now, being fully populated, as you said, how's this CANOPY trial progressing so far? And when do you anticipate approval for VYD222?
Yeah, so the key here is this study is being used for a hopeful submission to an emergency use authorization with the FDA. The EUA pathway continues to be open because A, as we've talked about, there are no products available, and B, the fact that we're still in this emergency situation given the unmet need. And so that's the goal of the program. Right now, what we've been saying is our intent and our goal is to have top-line data from this study late this year or early Q1 next year. And that data in combination with data from our manufacturing and non-clinical would be pulled together into an EUA submission as soon as practicable. So that's really the plan, is to do it as soon as we can, assuming that all the data that we generate supports it.
When approval is granted, how often will patients need VYD222 to remain protected from COVID-19? And then give us a website where we can learn much more about Invivyd.
Yeah, certainly. The dosing will really be dependent on what happens with the virus. And so one of the things that is both challenging and a bit exciting as it relates to SARS-CoV-2 is we continue to see this viral evolution, which has led to different waves of disease. And so what we're really targeting is looking at that. You can take a look at it in vitro and see what the antibody looks like against new variants, which we will continue to monitor. And based on that, that will then really drive what some of the redosing recommendations and guidelines look like. So that's really what the plan is there. We'll continue to monitor and test it against variants. And we'll work on getting it to patients as soon as possible. The website is Invivyd with a Y in the last slot, so INVIVYD.com.
Dave, I appreciate you joining us here on Health Professional Radio. Looking forward to another conversation as CANOPY progresses.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard, in conversation with Dave Herring. Audio copies of this program are available at healthprofessionalradio.com.au, also at Anchor, Spotify, and be sure and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Health Professional Radio.